Smoke filled the cockpit. Alarms blared. Captain James Riley fought the shuddering controls, his heart pounding against his ribs like a frantic drummer. The jungle planet below rushed closer, a tapestry of emerald and sapphire, beautiful and deadly. He braced for impact. The crash was an explosion of noise and light. James blacked out for a moment, the smell of ozone and burning metal filling his nostrils when he came to. He was alive. He cut the emergency beacon, knowing it was a slim hope in this uncharted corner of the galaxy. Exiting the wreckage, he found himself in a world unlike any he had ever seen. Towering trees, draped in vines thick as a man's torso, clawed at the sky. The air hummed with the drone of unseen insects and the cries of strange birds. He was stranded, alone, 1,000,000 miles from home. And yet, there was a strange beauty to it all, a sense of wonder that chased away some of the fear. He had been walking for what felt like hours when he saw them. The dense foliage of the jungle seemed to close in around him, each step becoming more laborious as the undergrowth thickened. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and the distant calls of unseen creatures. His senses were on high alert, every rustle and snap of a twig sending a jolt of adrenaline through his veins. 2 points of light, glowing softly in the deepening gloom. They seemed to float in the air, suspended in the darkness like twin stars in a night sky. The lights were mesmerizing, drawing him in with their gentle, almost hypnotic glow. He felt an inexplicable pull towards them, as if they were calling out to him, beckoning him to come closer. They were eyes, he realized, large and luminescent, watching him from the shadows of the jungle. The realization sent a shiver down his spine. These were not the eyes of any creature he had ever encountered before. They were intelligent, aware, and they were fixed on him with an intensity that made his heart race. He could feel their gaze piercing through the darkness, seeing him, understanding him in a way that was both unsettling and strangely comforting. James froze, his hand instinctively reaching for the sidearm that was no longer there. Panic surged through him as he realized he was unarmed, vulnerable in this alien environment. His mind raced, trying to recall his training to find some way to defend himself if it came to that. But deep down, he knew that no amount of training could prepare him for this encounter. A figure emerged from the undergrowth, tall and slender, bathed in the ethereal glow of the surrounding flora. The light seemed to emanate from the plants themselves, casting an otherworldly radiance on the figure. It moved with a grace that was almost supernatural, each step fluid and deliberate, as if it were part of the jungle itself. It was humanoid in form, but with an otherworldly grace that made his breath catch in his throat. The figure's movements were smooth and elegant, almost as if it were gliding rather than walking. Its presence was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a living embodiment of the unknown. Her skin shimmered with a faint pearlescent sheen, and her hair, long and flowing, seemed to be woven from moonlight and shadow. The light played off her features, highlighting the delicate contours of her face, and the deep soulful eyes that seemed to hold the secrets of the universe. She was beautiful in a way that defied description, a vision of ethereal beauty that left him breathless. She approached cautiously, her steps making no sound on the jungle floor. Each movement was deliberate, as if she were testing the ground before her, ensuring that she made no sudden or threatening gestures. Her eyes never left his, maintaining a connection that was both intense and reassuring. It was as if she were trying to communicate with him through her gaze alone, conveying a message of peace and curiosity. He raised his hands, palms open, a gesture of peace. He hoped that she would understand, that she would see he meant no harm. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing in his ears as he waited for her reaction. The moment seemed to stretch on forever, a silent exchange of trust and understanding. She stopped a few paces away, tilting her head slightly as if studying him. Her eyes narrowed, and he could see the flicker of thoughts and emotions playing across her face. She seemed to be weighing her options, deciding whether to trust him or to retreat back into the safety of the jungle. The air was thick with tension, the outcome of this encounter hanging in the balance. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. His mouth was dry and his mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and questions. What could he say to her? How could he bridge the gap between their worlds? He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart, and attempted to find the right words. What could he say to this creature, this vision of alien beauty, in this strange and wonderful place? He felt a profound sense of awe and wonder, mixed with a deep curiosity about who she was and where she came from. This encounter was unlike anything he had ever experienced, a moment that would change his life forever. As he gazed at her, he knew that this was just the beginning of a journey into the unknown, a journey that would take him to the farthest reaches of his imagination and beyond. He learned her name was Lyra, though the sounds were difficult for him to pronounce. They communicated through a combination of gestures and expressions, a rudimentary but surprisingly effective means of communication. She was fascinated by him, by his clumsy movements and the strange metallic scent that clung to him. Lyra led him through the alien jungle, a world ablaze with bioluminescence. Giant flowers, their petals pulsing with soft light, swayed gently in the breeze. Creatures with translucent wings, trailing streamers of phosphorescent dust flitted amongst the trees. Waterfalls cascaded down moss-covered cliffs, their waters glowing with an inner fire. James had never seen anything so beautiful. His fear, though still present, was slowly being replaced by a sense of awe and wonder. He was a stranger in a strange land, but he was no longer alone. He had Lyra, and in her large, luminous eyes he saw a kindred spirit, a soul touched by the same sense of wonder that filled his own heart. Section 4. Trust in touch. Days turned into weeks, and the alien world that once seemed so hostile began to reveal its secrets to James. James, with Lyra's help, managed to salvage some supplies from the wreckage of his ship. They worked tirelessly, side by side, sorting through the debris, finding anything that could be of use. It was a painstaking process, but it brought them closer together. He learned to find food and water in the jungle, his initial apprehension giving way to a grudging respect for the alien ecosystem. Lyra taught him which plants were safe to eat, how to find fresh water, and the best places to set traps for small game. Each lesson was a step towards survival, and a step towards understanding. He was still a long way from home, but the thought no longer filled him with despair. Instead, he found a strange sense of peace in the routine they had established. The jungle, with its vibrant colors and unfamiliar sounds, had become a place of solace. He spent his days exploring the jungle with Lyra. They discovered hidden waterfalls, ancient trees, and creatures that defied imagination. Each day was an adventure, and each night they would sit by the fire, sharing stories of their worlds. They swam in clear, cool pools beneath waterfalls that shimmered with bioluminescent algae. The water was refreshing, a welcome respite from the heat of the jungle. At night the algae would glow, casting an ethereal light that made the water look like liquid stars. They shared meals of strange but surprisingly palatable fruits and berries. Each new food was a discovery, a small victory in their struggle to survive. They would laugh at the odd flavors and textures, finding joy in the simple act of eating together. They communicated through a mixture of gestures, expressions, and increasingly touch. Words were often unnecessary. A glance, a smile, or a touch on the arm could convey more than any language. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. One day, while exploring a network of caves filled with glowing crystals, they stumbled upon a hidden chamber. The crystals emitted a soft, pulsating light, illuminating the cave in a kaleidoscope of colors. It was a breathtaking sight, one that made them feel like they had stepped into another world. James tripped and fell, twisting his ankle. The pain was immediate and intense, shooting up his leg like fire. He tried to stand, but his ankle gave way, sending him crashing back to the ground. Lyra rushed to his side, her touch gentle as she examined his injury. Her hands were cool against his skin, her fingers probing the swollen flesh with a healer's care. She murmured softly, her voice a soothing balm to his pain. He looked up at her, into her large, luminous eyes, and saw concern, empathy, something akin to love. It was a moment of connection, a bridge between their two worlds. In her eyes he saw not just an alien but a friend, a companion, someone who cared deeply for him. In that moment he knew that he was no longer just a visitor on this planet, but a part of it, connected to it, to Lyra, in a way he had never imagined possible. The jungle, the creatures, the very air he breathed all felt like home, and Lyra, with her gentle touch and kind heart, was the anchor that held him there. Section 5. The Language of Water. They stood beneath the cascading torrent of the crystal falls, feeling the raw power of nature envelop them. The water crashed down with a force that seemed to shake the very ground beneath their feet, creating a misty veil that surrounded them. The water pounding down around them was a relentless symphony, a cacophony of sound that drowned out all other noises. It was as if the waterfall had a voice of its own, a language that spoke directly to their souls. A symphony of sound and light played out before them, the sunlight filtering through the mist creating a dazzling display. Each droplet of water seemed to catch the light, refracting it into 1,000 tiny rainbows that danced in the air. The mist rising from the falls danced with rainbows, creating an ethereal atmosphere that felt almost otherworldly. It was a place where reality and fantasy seemed to blur, where the ordinary rules of the world no longer applied. The light from the bioluminescent plants added to the magical ambiance, casting a soft, colorful glow that seemed to pulse in time with the rhythm of the falls. It was a mesmerizing sight, one that captivated their senses and held them spellbound. James watched Lyra as she stood at the edge of the falls, her arms outstretched as if to embrace the very essence of the place. Her face was tilted up towards the cascading water, her expression one of pure, unadulterated joy. She looked at him, her eyes shining with an almost feverish intensity. It was a look that spoke volumes, a silent communication that needed no words. She reached out, took his hand, and led him closer to the falls. Her eyes, filled with an almost feverish intensity, locked onto his. She reached out, took his hand, and led him closer to the falls. The connection between them felt electric, charged with an energy that was both exhilarating and terrifying. As they moved closer, the roar of the water grew louder, a deafening sound that seemed to fill every corner of their minds. Yet, amidst the noise, he could feel her hand in his, warm and strong, a lifeline in the chaos. The roar of the water was deafening, a constant, overwhelming presence that drowned out all other sounds. But even in the midst of this cacophony, he could feel her hand in his, warm and strong, grounding him in the moment. She placed his hand against her chest, right above her heart. He could feel the rapid beat of her pulse beneath his fingers, a tangible reminder of her presence, her vitality. The rapid beat of her pulse beneath his fingers was a stark contrast to the steady, unyielding rhythm of the falls. It was a reminder of their humanity, their fragility, in the face of nature's raw power. He could feel the rapid beat of her pulse beneath his fingers, a rhythm that matched the intensity of the moment. It was a connection that went beyond words, a silent understanding that bound them together. She gestured towards the falls, then to herself, and finally to him. It was a simple gesture, but one that carried profound meaning. He understood that this place, this moment, was something sacred to her. He understood. The falls were not just a beautiful natural wonder. They were a sacred place for her people, a place of power and renewal. It was a place where the boundaries between the physical and the spiritual blurred, where the soul could find solace and strength. The falls were a sacred place for her people, a place of power and renewal. It was a place where the natural world and the spiritual realm intersected, where one could find both peace and inspiration. A place of power and renewal, the falls held a special significance that went beyond their physical beauty. They were a source of life, a symbol of the enduring strength and resilience of nature. And she was sharing this place, this part of herself, with him. It was a gesture of trust, of opening up her world to him, inviting him to be a part of something deeply personal and meaningful. This part of herself, with him. It was a declaration of trust, of affection, of something more profound than he could fully comprehend. It was an invitation to share in her world, to understand her on a deeper level. It was a declaration of trust, of affection, of something more profound than he could fully comprehend. He squeezed her hand, a silent promise in the roar of the water. It was a promise to be there, to support her, to cherish this moment and the many more to come. He squeezed her hand, a silent promise in the roar of the water. It was a promise to honor this place, this moment, and the bond they shared. It was a promise to be present, to listen, and to understand the language of water. A silent promise in the roar of the water. In that moment, amidst the deafening roar and the dazzling light, they made a silent vow to each other, a vow to cherish this place, this connection, and the unspoken language that bound them together.